UFC flyweight division has been very, very interesting. There's my camera, pops up late all the time. Very interesting recently. We've had Brandon Moreno go ahead and fight both Amir Albazi and Steve Erceg as a recent. Kai Kara France just knocked out Steve Erceg. Manel Kape just beat the absolute life out of Vasyl Almabayev. A lot of things happening in flyweight towards the top, and a little bit of a weird situation going on at the top where the two top guys in the division already lost to the champion multiple times. Let me matchmake UFC flyweight per request. Again, I don't know if I mentioned in the beginning of the video. A lot of people DM me about this. A lot of people actually on my lives were asking for a UFC flyweight ranking video. So here we go. UFC flyweights ranked. Not ranked. Matchmade. Matchmaking them. I just realized that covers the UFC, but you know, it is what it is. My camera's there. I clicked on here. Okay, there we go. So does that work? Okay, well, you guys already got spoiled the first matchup, but we already knew. Alexandre Pantoja is the champion. He's probably going to be fighting Kai Kara France, although I don't necessarily think Kai Kara France should deserve it or should be getting the fight next. I do think that it's going to be the most likely outcome just because, again, the top two guys in Brandon Royval and Brandon Moreno have already fought for the title multiple times. If Moreno hadn't fought Pantoja 3 times already, I would guarantee that they would do that fight in Mexico. But I do think Brandon Moreno has a different fight coming up for him that's going to be really fun and a title eliminator. And Royval is a pretty good fight coming up for him as well. I'm going to show you guys this. But this is the matchup I foresee. I do think Pantoja still wins this, although I do think Kai Kara France is a pretty good anti-grappler. It's a situation where I don't necessarily see how Kai Kara France really has improved too much. I mean, I'm seeing Amir Albazi get his back, and I don't think Albazi is really that good of a grappler. But this is the fight I would make next. Moving on, Brandon Moreno, again, coming off of his 2 big wins. I do think he deserves a title eliminator at the bare minimum, regardless of the Pantoja fight. Like, yes, he's lost to Pantoja 3 times, but at the end of the day, this guy is still beating everybody else in the division. You have a pretty similar situation to Max Holloway versus Alexander Volkanovski, where Holloway was just cleaning out the division. The difference is the 3rd time out, Holloway didn't. This is the 3rd time out, and Brandon Moreno is cleaning out the division. Beating top prospect after top prospect. Same thing with Royval. Royval beat Tatsuro Taira. So, who I think Brandon Moreno should fight next is Manel Kape. Manel Kape obviously coming off with the Vasyl Almabayev performance. I do think Manel Kape's going to be hot. He's going to be one of the prospects everybody wants to watch. Who does not want to see Manel Kape versus Brandon Moreno in a 5-rounder as like a co-main event in Mexico? That would be an unbelievable fight. And then you get to give Brandon Moreno, if he wins this fight, a title shot. If not, Manel Kape, new blood, new fight. He fought Pantoja earlier in his career. Was a pretty close one. I think he got grappled actually pretty badly in that fight, if I'm not mistaken. But at the end of the day, this is a very fun fight to make. I don't think there's a better fight to make in flyweight other than Brandon Moreno versus Manel Kape. There's no better fight to make in flyweight. Moving on, I got Brandon Royval. Again, like I said, he beat Tatsuro Taira, a really close fight. Actually showcases, in my opinion, how good Tatsuro Taira is. But Brandon Royval is still towards the top of the division. He also beat Brandon Moreno, which is very important. So I think you should be given a matchup where I could have given him the Manel Kape matchup, which makes sense. But because he's pulled out recently and he's been out for a little bit, I do think giving him the new guy in Kyoji Horiguchi, who is essentially just announced in Rizin. He's getting rid of his title. He's dropping the title and he's going back to the UFC. The UFC just brought Kaya Sakura straight into a title shot. I don't think they're going to do that again with Horiguchi, but I do think they're going to put him in a very high output, like high touted situation, just so they can have him featured a little bit. They can give Royval a matchup where if Royval wins, you know, obviously you just beat the guy that just came in. It's going to be a very good fight. It's going to be a very good marketable fight, of course. I don't see how the UFC put Horiguchi so far down the rankings, and because you want to mix it up at the top, you have Royval Moreno quote-unquote holding up the division. I mean, they keep winning, obviously, and they just want their next shot again against Pantoja. But the UFC is going to keep throwing new guys at them, which is why I think Moreno should fight Manel Kape. Brandon Royval should fight Kyoji Horiguchi. Very good fights in between them. Moving on to Amir Albazi, got the life beaten out of him by Brandon Moreno across a 5-rounder. I mean, it was an insane beating, honestly. Relatively long layoff for Albazi. Lost the Kai Kara France fight in everybody's opinion, because if you thought he won the Kai Kara France fight, you don't know ball. Yeah, he lost against Kai Kara France, got a robbery decision in that one. He's still towards the top of the division nonetheless. I do think him versus Tatsuro Taira would be a fantastic matchup. Taira fought a razor close decision against Brandon Royval. I mean, it was a very, very, very good fight. And Brandon Royval's at the absolute top of the division. And again, Royval just beat Brandon Moreno prior to that. So this is a really good matchup for Taira, where he doesn't fight the number 1 guy anymore. He's number 5. This is a top 5 matchup between the two. And I do think Taira wins this one. I just think Taira deserves it. I think Albazi has to defend his spot. He has to move down the rankings a little bit. And we're not forcing him to move too far down. And this is a really good fight between the top 5 guys to see which one of them still belong in there. And then you could find a title eliminator for them a little bit after that. Moving on to Alex Perez. It's been a while since you've seen Alex Perez fight. Of course, the Makayev fight wasn't necessarily the best of looks for him, but I thought he won the Makayev fight, if I'm not wrong, to be honest. I genuinely, I do believe he won the Makayev fight. But moving forward, I want to see him fight Tagir Ulanbekov. Tagir is going to have to fight in the rankings at some point. It just seems like the type of gatekeeper matchup for Tagir where, all right, are you good enough to keep moving forward, or are you going to struggle to take down Alex Perez? I think Perez actually gives him a hard time. I don't rate Tagir as often. I mean, he's like one of the worst Dagestani fighters that we have in the UFC. I'm not too high on him. I don't really see how Tagir is really going to do too much in this fight. I think Perez can actually mitigate it. Leg kicks will be pretty good. I think Tagir is actually relatively fragile. He's not like the most durable of Dagestanis. He doesn't have the best cardio either. This is definitely a fight Perez can win, and I wouldn't be surprised if Perez can keep him at bay, defend the takedowns, and chop his legs off. I genuinely wouldn't be surprised, even with the layoff on Perez. I think people sleep on him a little bit too often than that. Steve Erceg obviously coming off of a lot of big fights. You have Steve Erceg against Pantoja. You have him against Kai Kara France. You have him against Brandon Moreno, where he had two really close fights against Pantoja and against Brandon Moreno. Although, in my opinion, decisively lost both of them, he still fought competitively in both. Kai Kara France knocked him out, landed that big overhand. I mean, he jumped into level competition very, very high, and he didn't look too bad, genuinely, for a guy who's still very young. I think he's like 28 years old. They're going to give him a relative step down in competition, but I don't think he should just absolutely plummet towards the bottom of the rankings. I think him versus also Almabayev was booked. I think this is a pretty good fight to make. I think this is a pretty good fight for Erceg, where Almabayev is going to be trying to grapple here, and I think Erceg is honestly a very good jiu-jitsu player to mitigate this against Almabayev. I don't think Almabayev is some dominant force on top to where he's going to get on top of Erceg and keep him there and keep him at bay. I think Erceg's the better jiu-jitsu player between the two. I think he's obviously levels above on the feet. This would be a very fun fight to watch. If Erceg can get himself going, I don't really see how Almabayev can threaten him too much on the feet. Doesn't really have the power to threaten him. I don't know where that light is coming from, what my camera's doing, but yeah. I think this is a very favorable matchup for Erceg, and it's a good middle of the pack matchup to see which guy can keep stepping up in competition a little bit more, and to see, obviously, I don't think Erceg is a bad fighter nonetheless. He just fought, three of the best in the division so far. Moving on to Tim Elliott. It's been a minute since we saw Tim Elliott, right? But he hasn't announced retirement. He's still in the rankings for a while, and there's got to be a young guy for Tim Elliott to fight. We're not going to give him an old vet. You know how it works in the UFC. When you're an old vet that's holding up in position towards the top 10 or a little bit lower than that, you're going to be a gatekeeper in the division. I thought I put Kaya Square. I forgot about that. Loner Kavanaugh is a guy who I think is everything you want in a prospect. Now, I know a lot of people might be saying I'm pushing Kavanaugh a little too fast, but he fought a really good fight against Felipe Dos Santos. I mean, even though he lost the first round, the guy is pushing pace like no other. I mean, the guy has the grappling. He has the striking. He has the durability. He has the cardio. He has the power. He has the finishing ability. He has the fight IQ. He has the adjustments. He listens to his coaches. Like, this guy has everything you want in a prospect. He is so good, and he's still 25 or 26 years old, something like that. I want to see this fight. I want to see him fight a vet. I know I'm pushing him into the rankings very quickly, but I think he's such an exciting prospect, and I do think this is a situation where he can beat Tim Elliott. He can maintain the grappling here. He can hurt him on the feet. And again, he gets a top 10 ranking, top 11, top 10 ranking, where he forces himself inside a really, in my opinion, stacked division of flyweight. Flyweight's becoming so fun, which is why I'm making this video, which is why a lot of you guys suggested I make this video. I love Loner Kavanaugh as a prospect. I think he's only going to get better. I can't wait to watch him grow and get better. His position on the mat, fantastic. I mean, his jiu-jitsu is pretty good. His takedowns are very solid. Not only are the takedowns solid, but him getting on top of Felipe Dos Santos and maintaining position to be able to land that ground and pound. I mean, the guy's exactly what you want in a prospect. I keep saying that. This is a very, very fun and entertaining prospect. I can't wait to watch him. I really want to watch this fight. Debated between him and Kaya Sakura against Tim Elliott, but I do think Kaya Sakura has a fight coming up for him that I think could be very fun. I think it's relatively favorable for him. I do think this guy is okay. I think he's a little bit overrated. Not Kaya Sakura. I think Kaya Sakura is fantastic, honestly. And you're not going to drop him so far down. I know he's ranked number 15, or like wishy-washy between 15 and like exiting the rankings. He did just fight for the title at the end of the day. The UFC is not going to just throw him into some very easy matchup outside of the rankings. I think you go towards the bottom of the rankings where Temirov just beat Charles Johnson. You get Kaya Sakura versus Temirov. Fantastic first round. I think Kaya Sakura can hurt him pretty badly, but Temirov is a really rock solid chin. I don't know. This is a very fun fight. I mean, you could put this on the prelims of a pay-per-view or something like that. You could even put it as a pay-per-view opener, in my opinion. I think this is such a high output, fantastic, explosive fight between these two. Do not put this in the Apex. For the love of God, do not put this in the Apex. This is such a good fight. Do not squander it and put it in the Apex. You know what I mean? Give me Kaya Sakura versus Temirov. I think it'd be a fantastic fight. I think Oscar actually runs away with it, to be honest. He's a better striker between the two, in my opinion. And I honestly, much better gas tank. And of course, finally, Joshua Van, my favorite prospect in the UFC for a long time now. My only concern with Josh Van is, of course, he gets a little arrogant with his strike and defense, and he takes a lot of punches at times. I mean, Kevin Borjas, I think, knocked him down. Borjas looked pretty good against Ronaldo Rodriguez, but again, it's more so because Ronaldo Rodriguez is pretty poor. We're calling him Luis Rodriguez. He doesn't deserve to be called Ronaldo anyways. But yeah, I'm going to more than likely... I mean, we already know he's booked against Bruno Silva again, and I think Josh Van's going to beat him. I'm a little concerned, again, with his ability to take punches. Like, his chin is good, and he relies on it very often, but that's the problem. He relies on it. He fights with a little bit of arrogance to where he's just moving forward, and he's not really giving much respect to the guys that he's fighting, and that's what got him clipped against Charles Johnson. I think he's a much better fighter than Charles Johnson. I think he would have walked away with that third round. I mean, they're both third-round fighters, but Joshua Van was going to win that fight if he fought a little bit more cognizant. Like, he fought so stupid in that Charles Johnson fight, especially in the third round. I mean, he was willing to go ahead and go to war with him, and that's Charles Johnson's way of trying to go into the third round. You need to be able... You know you're the better striker. He's the better boxer. He's much better than Bruno Silva, in my opinion, both in the grappling and the striking. I mean, he's one of the more fantastic boxers I've seen in the UFC. He's such a fun prospect, and he's still super, super young. I can't wait to watch Joshua Van fight this, and I cannot wait to watch him fight after the Bruno Silva fight. But he needs to just tighten it up on the defense and stop accepting brawls, because you're giving your opponents time. I want to watch. I'm trying to coach this guy as if I know what I'm doing. I want to watch him win. I want to watch Josh Van become champion. And I think he has a skill set to do so. He just needs to put it together and be a little bit more disciplined on the defensive side. But yeah, appreciate you guys all for being here. Like I said, 10 to 15 minute videos every single time I come on here for YouTube. Follow MMA DBM on TikTok. This is the same thing. Subscribe over here on YouTube. Appreciate everybody for being here. I will see you guys tomorrow. Yeah, daily uploads. Appreciate you guys. See you guys.